Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. Google has written an open letter that they have posted that is meant to help state broadband offices improve the success of broadband deployments from BEAD and other future deployments. Be right back to take a look at that. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Broadband Deployment News. So Google has this open letter that they put here on the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society. You see here Google Fiber's open letter to state broadband leaders on planning for BEAD and future deployment efforts. So Google, they are obviously in the fiber business. They got in that business a long time ago. They're not just a search company and other things that they do. So they are providing broadband services in various cities, and they are doing that on a competitive basis generally. So they'll go in, even if there's another provider there, and they'll go in and provide another option for citizens in those various places. A lot of times, they do tend to be more urban areas where I don't think they've done a lot of rural deployments, but they've got some advice here for broadband offices, and there's some good advice here. So I thought I'd look through this real quick. If you are a broadband office or broadband officer, you can check it out. I put the link to this article in the description of this video. So I'm just going to look at a couple of things on here. So you see Google Fiber's open letter to state broadband leaders on planning for BEAD and future deployment efforts. So just read through a couple of things here. So over the past decade, G-Fiber, Google Fiber, has launched gigabit speed internet service in nearly 20 major metro areas, setting a new standard for internet speeds, climbing to the top of industry rankings and customer satisfaction, injecting meaningful competition into a fossilized industry, and driving other providers to upgrade their speeds and service they offer their customers. And that's true. I mean, basically, when they started announcing that they were doing this, it made cities take notice and want to get the service in their location. In fact, I think there was a city somewhere, I can't remember where. Was it Kansas City somewhere around there that actually was going to change. They said, we'll change our name to Google or something like that. I think they were kidding, half kidding anyway. But a lot of cities and towns wanted to get involved because it was a way to have Google come in there and provide gigabit service. And this was really when nobody was doing that except maybe Chattanooga. The city of Chattanooga was really early in that as well. But Google came out and said, hey, this is something people want and need, and we're going to go ahead and do this. So they were very early on that. And then they kind of pulled back a little because there were a lot of other providers in areas who were doing this, and maybe the need was less. They did make other providers take notice and want to do that as well. And then, of course, with all of the broadband funding, I think they're back in it now. So this, in addition to providing advice for these broadband offices, I think they're probably hoping that these broadband offices will thank them for being so helpful and maybe give them a shot at some of these funds in certain areas. So as a company that has long been a leader and innovator in broadband deployment and access, and one that believes that choice and competition in broadband space create a rising tide that lifts all boats, we believe there are several infrastructure and deployment policies that will help broadband leaders achieve their goal of bringing affordable, high-quality internet access to all residents. Removing barriers for broadband deployment will help stakeholders bring connectivity to as many households as possible, more quickly and with less disruption. The following 6 recommendations answer a straightforward question. What can state broadband leaders do right now to remove barriers for broadband deployment? We hope you will find these suggestions helpful as you continue to expand broadband access across your state, and then also probably saying we hope you will be thankful and remember us when we maybe submit some bids. So number 1, work with state 811 call center to address locates constraints. And locates, that's a utility. Locate, when you can call 811 and say, hey, I'm doing some landscaping, or I'm going to be putting in a pool or something. If you're going to be digging up your yard, you call 811 so that you don't cut a bunch of utilities. The utility companies would rather come out there, take the time to come out there and mark where those utilities are so that you don't cut lines. And, obviously when we're going to be doing broadband deployment on a large scale, this is something that needs to be thought about, that providers need to think about and operators need to think about, or that needs to be thought about on a large scale. Each state's 811 center requires that all utility companies and anyone else who has infrastructure on the ground mark their assets before a new excavation project occurs in the same area. The current locate system is not designed to handle the vast amount of new project work anticipated in the next few years. They mention here it's also no surprise that there's a shortage of locator personnel. So just like any kind of deployment task that needs to be done, you've got to have people go out there and locate the utilities. We recommend updating the existing locates process to accommodate the increased construction activity and improving practices and processes to protect communities and maintain public safety. We suggest the following. Discuss best practices with new deployers, including the following. Participation with Utility Coordinating Committee, UCC meetings. So that makes sense. Take the state's free 811 training prior to creating tickets. Mentions here each state has some kind of training for their specific laws, so they recommend that everybody get up to speed on that. Because there are going to be new providers coming in here. There are going to be some people coming in that have not deployed in a particular state maybe, or maybe they're new to the broadband game. It could be a municipality that's familiar with maybe with fiber, or utility, like an electric membership co-op that's familiar with fiber, maybe doing fiber backhaul, those kinds of things, but maybe not last mile kind of deployments. Suggest pre-construction meetings between operator, excavator, and locators. So just basically better communication there. Encourage data sharing between the state and 811. Share with the state's 811 center the locations where publicly funded projects are going to be built. This is a good point. It says the state should or could even share this information before awards are announced, since the location is what matters in the locates process, not who the broadband deployer is. So, in other words, states can kind of get ahead of this potential problem by, as soon as they've nailed down all the locations that are going to be have fiber construction or broadband basically deployed, they can then make that available to anybody that will be doing these locates, so that they have that information in advance. It doesn't matter yet who's going to be doing that. Consider using broadband funding to support the locates process. So grant funding for in-house locators in municipalities as well as for utilities. And it mentions here small and rural utilities are likely to feel the most pressure, again, possibly just because of the amount of work that's going to be done all at once, plus, again, problems finding folks. Continue partnerships between state 811 centers and state broadband offices. Know the best practices. One-page summary written by the state 811 advising the winning recipients of the basic steps. Modernizing 811's technology. I'm not sure, different states may have different technologies, but certainly something electronic would be good as opposed to forms, written forms, those kinds of things. Reporting chronic damagers would also be useful, so who maybe needs to be reprimanded or have maybe really more likely better training, so that you can keep track, and also make sure that you take that into account when you're deciding who's going to be doing these locates. Streamline permitting, create standardized resources for cities and counties to simplify the permitting process. And that's obviously something that's very important. A lot's been said with BEAD coming up about having to streamline permitting to make sure that that's not going to stand in the way of getting broadband deployed as quickly as possible. So if you've got to wait forever to get permits, to get rights of way, those kinds of things, then that's just going to delay the citizens in an area of getting better broadband. So it mentions here permitting is one of the biggest challenges to broadband deployment. So it mentions create an online one-stop shop for submitting permits. Streamline the application. Identify a single point of contact within one department to coordinate all approvals. So basically, get rid of red tape. Don't make it where operators have to jump through hoops and go through a maze of people and processes to get this done. Arrange regular meetings with broadband deployers to escalate concerns. Support automatic online tracking tools to ensure all tracking on a single system. Again, try to streamline things, make it easy to have one place to submit a permit, to find out the status of a permit. Distribute a model requirements checklist to local governments for them to use when broadband deployers try to engage. Insight into the entire process is critical. So again, checklists are always great because you're less likely to miss important steps when you have one. Promote broadband choice and competition for multifamily property residents. While there might be multiple internet service providers in the building, residents are often presented with only one option, and this is no accident. We urge state leaders to encourage transparency by restricting ISPs' ability to implement these agreements when they've been awarded public funding. And I believe that's not allowed anymore. I believe the FCC came out a year or so ago and said that if if you have wiring in a building, that's got to be open access. In other words, somebody like Comcast can't come in with their coax cable, and I think even if it's already there and Comcast had an exclusive, that can no longer be exclusive. Anybody can use that wiring. Now, of course, if it's coax, you might be thinking, well, what if it's a fiber provider? But actually, there are solutions for that. And if you want a solution for that, give us a call or send us an email. I'll put it up right now. So we actually have a solution for that. It's called G.HN. And what G.HN or GHN is it's the ability to take existing wiring in a building. And that could be coax or twisted pair. And you can run your fiber right up to the building, and then you can put a piece of equipment. It's not a really big piece of equipment, just like a one rack kind of unit, depending how many units you have in there. Put that out in a pedestal or somewhere like in a closet in the building. And then you can actually, with that, run your internet service. So you go fiber to that device, and then you can run your internet service to each unit in the MDU, in the apartment building or whatever, via the existing phone line or the existing coax cable. And you can get gigabit speeds over that existing cable. And then in the unit that you have, you just have a little small thing. It's about the size of a deck of cards that plugs in there. That's the CPE, the customer premises equipment. And then they can keep whatever router they had, or you can provide a router if you want to do that. And that way you can provide internet service, again, over existing wiring, gigabit service. And the really important thing about that is you don't need to rip the wiring out of the building, or you don't need to install your own wiring. Because again, if you install your own wiring, that means anybody else can use it. So why not use the wiring that's in there? And you can do this through G.HN. So again, you see our contact information up there. Contact us, send an email. I'll get it to the right people, and we'll reach out to you and let you know how that is done. But that's an important thing that can be done. So again, I don't think in apartment buildings now that somebody who has wiring in there that's providing internet, I don't think that can be exclusive anymore. I think anybody now can use that infrastructure. But again, how do they do that if it's somebody else's wiring? Well, again, G.HN, or GHN. So let us know. Assign a designated state official to liaise with cities on broadband build-out. The state should designate a liaison to coordinate with cities on broadband build-outs, best practices in permitting, and guidance on navigating general challenges. So again, that's similar to what the NTIA has as far as for state broadband offices. There's each state has a contact at the NTIA that they can talk to and get questions answered and those kinds of things. And you should have the same kind of person in your state broadband office that can work with cities. And I would think any of your subgrantees should have a person that they can reach out and touch. I don't know if you could have one or more than one person do that. I know a lot of broadband offices are running on, just small staffs of, 3-4 people at most sometimes, and getting a lot done. But a lot of that work is going to be switching from what's already been done, and getting these 5-year plans out and initial proposals out. So there's maybe going to be some open time for people where they can start helping subgrantees there. So just make sure you've got someone for your subgrantees and potential subgrantees to reach out to get information. Create and promote a state and local government broadband innovation resource list to keep cities and counties up to date on the latest technological developments. Encourage communities in your state to consider innovative deployment procedures or processes and construction techniques, such as microtrenching, that speed deployment and cut construction time. And actually, that's something I think that Google was doing. That's something that they were doing as they were deploying fiber. They learned some lessons. I believe they had at least one location where maybe the microtrenching didn't work that well, and it was maybe being exposed. So basically, microtrenching, instead of having to dig this fairly deep trench and lay the fiber down there, you can, in a asphalt road, for example, you can do this little micro trench. You can put the fiber down in the road, and then it gets covered. I think it's with an epoxy kind of material, so it doesn't have to be very deep. And that epoxy material is supposed to last and be good. But I think what was happening is maybe it wasn't deep enough, or the epoxy wasn't holding, or something like that on, I think, maybe one of Google's deployments. But they probably learned their lesson on how to do that better. So they're suggesting here that's a way to get fiber deployments to be less expensive, and you can do them quicker. So trenching becomes more reasonable priced, and it's less time if you can do it this micro trenching way. You don't have to go to the side of the road and dig trenches and go through, it's a lot easier. So like I say, Google, I think, has got a lot of experience in this, which I don't think they necessarily say here, but they can certainly do that, and others can do it as well. Set up a state, county, city task force that meets regularly to share information and troubleshoot issues. This unprecedented effort to connect every household will require information sharing. The task force can discuss best practices, brainstorm solutions, and share timely updates. That's another way maybe to, since you might have a small broadband office and everybody's going to be busy, is you can create this task force, a volunteer kind of task force with, could be service providers, community heads, and others, maybe universities, technology experts, whatever, create this task force so that people can have these discussions and work together. And it's a way to, and your broadband office, somebody in the broadband office can chair that, head that, whatever. And that's a way to kind of get lots of voices and lots of expertise to look at the problem. So again, there are six ideas that they have for broadband offices. Again, I linked to this. If you're a broadband office, just check the description of this video and you'll see that. I think there's some good advice there. And Google, again, they do have experience doing this, and they have experience doing it in, and this is important, in areas that they're not familiar with. So, you might, again, have that, somebody coming into your state or a portion of your state that's not necessarily familiar with your laws, those kinds of things. So Google's been through a lot of that. Again, they've kind of honed some of the technology and learned some things from that. So it's good advice, I think. So again, if you've got any questions about GHN, go ahead. You can see our contact info there, or anything else you want to know, just reach out to us. We provide all kinds of services for broadband providers, from 24/7 end user support if you need help with that. And you might, if you're going to be new to the broadband industry, or you're going to be getting a lot more customers, we can help with that. We can do your overflow calls. If you just need help with overflow, we can do after hours, weekends, those kinds of things. So we can help there. We can help with diagnostics. Cybersecurity, if you are looking at the NIST requirements that you're going to need to do if you're a broadband operator and you realize, wow, we've got to get cybersecurity that is compliant with NIST. How do we do that? We can help you. We can tell you how you do that, and we can actually provide the services that will make you compliant. So reach out to us there as well. Thanks for joining me. If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button, ring the bell to be notified when I'm live, and you'll get that. And if you like this video, if you give me a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. I appreciate it that you joined me today, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.